Okay. All right. It is 6 o'clock, and we are going to reconvene here today. And with that, first thing on tonight's agenda, the roll call. Please, Superintendent. Present.
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 And then, okay. So with that, is there any public comment on the closed session agenda items? Seeing none, it is 6:01, and we will recess the closed session. We'll be back here at 7 o'clock. I'll turn my microphone on. And Clerk Crispy, if you wouldn't mind, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And no action was taken in closed session. And I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And moving to item 7A, public comment. This will be on public comment on items not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right on to 8A and AUTA comments. Don't jinx it.
Alrighty. All right. Good evening, Board and Superintendent Meyer. I wanted to officially welcome our new superintendent, Dr. Brittany Meyer. AUTA looks forward to working with you and building a strong foundation between our labor unions and the school district, built on transparency, communication, teamwork, and problem solving. I'd also like to welcome our new CBO officer. The annual new teacher and new employee orientation is on Friday, and we have approximately 35 new hires. If you multiply that number by the $7,000 for onboarding for each employee, the district has spent over $245,000. Now, taking that a step further, we've lost many teachers over the past 3 years, roughly about 100. If you multiply that by the 7,000, you're looking at $700,000, over $500,000. That if employees had stayed in our district, they would have already been compensated, they would have been, excuse me, that would cost over $700,000 on employees that have not stayed in our district. If you would have compensated the employees a competitive wage, fostered a climate of value and respect, and a community, many of these employees would have chosen to stay. Again, the new hire of teachers that we are hiring are not highly qualified. I know that this is on the agenda, but it specifically states from MLG that it was brought to the board meeting in June and it never was. And the information that's on here is incorrect. The numbers are incorrect. I don't know where she's getting them from, but it says that we need 2 CLAD certificates and 2 resource specialists. But then on the next page, it says 2 multiple subjects, 4 single subjects, and 2 SPED with a total of 6. But when I'm adding the numbers up, it's not correct. When you're adding the numbers of 3 multiple subjects, 4 single subjects, 2 SPED, that equals 9. So I have no idea where the 6 number is coming from. So I would like clarification on that if possible. My last statement is about the TK transition. I know there's still lots going on, but my one question is going to the board. Who's going to be at the school sites come the first day of school to field the questions, the concerns, and the chaos based on the board decision that was made? Respectfully, Sarah Liebert, AUTA President.
And do we have CSCA with us tonight? I think so. So moving to item 9, the consent agenda, is there anything we'd like to pull? Seeing none, then I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, and moving to item 10A, approval of the employment contract for the chief business officer.
So, in front of you.
Oh.
I always forget about that. So what you have in front of you is a contract for our CBO. Sarah spilled the beans, but I'm moving forward with asking for your appointment of Jeremy McReynolds as our Chief Business Officer here in Auburn Union School District. Jeremy comes from a long career in both state government and finance, working for state parks and also for charter schools. For the last 2 years, he's been our accountant here in AUSD. I've had the privilege of working next to him for, I don't know, what are we on, 20 or 21 work days now, something like that. And it's been a pleasure. He understands finance. He can explain it to me in a way that I understand, and we can have meaningful conversation about it and make decisions based on student need within the confines of what AUSD can afford. So I absolutely appreciate working with Jeremy. I look forward to much more of that as the time goes on, and staff recommends that you approve his contract this evening. Thank you.
Is there any discussion, or clarifying questions on that?
I'm just excited, thinking ahead that this will pass. I'm very excited to have you on board, and thank you for all the work that you've already put in, because we know it's been a lot, and we're just super grateful.
I just want to offer my thanks as well for just stepping up and filling a much needed position and a hole that we needed in our district. So thank you.
It helps.
I want to also acknowledge that that Jeremy has put forth a lot of effort to
attend FICMAT training and to seek
Mm.
coaching and to continue his professional development. And that just speaks volumes about his commitment, and we appreciate you and thank you for welcome. Thank you for joining us in this role after we approve.
The passion that you show for not only the district, the numbers for the district that not many have that passion for. It's you can feel it, and it's contagious. So absolutely, we're ecstatic with this.
And with that, I move that we approve item 10A.
And I'll second it.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you.
Welcome. For longer.
Yeah, I just want to thank the board, and I really look forward to serving the district and continuing the progress that we're making and making sure that we can serve all students. And I'm looking forward to working with the board, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Jen. Yay.
Okay, item 10B, reviewing board policy 9320, meetings and notices.
In the agenda are two copies of the same board bylaw 9320. One is a track change, so you'll see right on there, and the other is just a clean copy, but they are the same other than that. This is the board policy. All right, I'll start again. So what you have in front of you are board bylaw 9320 on meeting and notices, two copies of that, track change, and then one without. This is the bylaw that governs when we have board meetings, on what day, and in what location. You can see on the track change document, the current bylaw is pretty stringent, that the meeting will always be held on the second Wednesday, will always be in the location we're currently in at our district office, and we will have it at 7 o'clock every month. For the most part, that will probably be true, but a little bit of flexibility in terms of, for example, next month, the second Wednesday is the first day of school. I know Sarah wants to be here at a board meeting after her first day of school. So obviously that was scheduled for the week after. In order to be in compliance and make sure those dates are in compliance, this flexible language was put in there. The way that it would read newly written, and I will read it to you so that we can all hear it together. Unless otherwise approved as part of the annual board calendar, the board shall hold one regular meeting on the second Wednesday of each month at 7 o'clock at the district office, 255 Epperly Lane, Auburn, California, 95603, or another district facility. So it allows us that little bit of flexibility if it's agreed upon within the voted on board calendar that we do each December for the following year. Typically, when presenting changes to a board policy or a bylaw, there is a first read, which is informational, a second read in which you would take action. Given that this is a fairly minor change and allows us some flexibility for August's meeting, it was brought to you as an action item this time. The first read can be waived. So it is the recommendation of staff to move forward with a motion to vote, but you also do have the option to postpone that until next month as well. And with that, I'll take any questions or comments if there are any. I appreciate and value the flexibility. I'm just trying to reread this first part of the revised language unless otherwise approved as part of the annual board calendar. Would that have given us the latitude to reschedule our July meeting? So we wouldn't have had to do this elaborate. I guess I just wanted to make sure, because what if it's, we set up the annual board calendar. I think it's at the December meetings typically. So I just want to make sure that this is flexible enough to allow us to reschedule meetings if need be. Yes, so what we could have done, if this language was in place, what we could have done is rescheduled that July meeting that was on the 10th to today, instead of opening it, closing it, and then having to be compliant with this. That's why we did the process we did. So we could just revise the annual board calendar
kind of throughout the year. That's our mechanism to, okay.
Correct. You obviously it's
to
approved in
reschedule.
December for the year, but
Yeah.
things will happen, right? So it would allow you to update that and change the date or make decisions like for August to not have it on the first day of school.
Yeah.
You also can elect to not hold a board meeting in July and take a recess in July. That's not atypical school boards either. So it would give you that flexibility to have a recess.
Okay, great.
And then this also, I noticed you add or another district facility, which is
Correct.
really nice, knowing that that first month in this August, we'll probably need to use EV King. So
Correct.
does this allow us, do we have to make that change, make that note when we put the agenda in, or can you 24 hours before the meeting's hosted, say we've changed the date? I mean, the time, I mean, the
The
location.
location.
Sorry.
Well, typically when we publish the agenda and a regular agenda would be 72 hours, we would say the location. Unless something, well, I don't know, our HVAC was out last week. So maybe if that was the case, we would reschedule it like closer to if we didn't know. But my assumption would be that would be very rare. We would know 72 hours in advance.
Okay.
But we would also know if there's going to be more people, for example, I think all of us have been here when this room gets very, very crowded. And so it would allow us the opportunity to have it elsewhere so that there's enough room for people to be, comfortable and have a seat.
And is there a process for that request, or it's just something you're like, hey, I feel like at this point we should be at EV Kane instead of the district office? So is it more instinctual, or is it like there's a process to it, or someone has to recommend?
When we approve the calendar, we're approving dates with the assumption it would be here. So then when we publish the agenda, it would state at the top that it was somewhere else. And when we push that notice out, we would say the board agenda is posted. And if, for example, they'd been here all year and people wouldn't be expecting a change, we probably would put some language in there like, please note the location
Right.
change for this meeting.
And I'm sorry, I think I didn't say that right, but if, let's just say, I know before, the AUTA president has requested that we have a meeting at EV Kane rather than the DO office, knowing that the teachers are going to show up.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
So how does that process work? Is that something like we have to request as board members, or you just instinctually, you're like, hey, this is a big agenda item.
Oh,
People are gonna be.
I would be asking, like,
Okay.
Sarah, do you expect a high turnout? I might be talking to Cindy if she expects a high turnout.
Beautiful.
Have we been hearing that community are interested in something on the agenda? Then we would schedule that for the larger venue.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also if we've had a series of meetings with quite a few people, then I think we would just make the assumption, okay, for the next 2 or 3 meetings, we'll be there and then we'll kind of regroup and decide.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. I move that we approve the revision to board policy 9320 on first read.
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Yep, and on to you, 10C, the LCAP.
I'm sorry, while she's getting up, are we still repeating I've been forgetting to say my name. Do you still want us to say our name in the microphone?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
for the
I'm
reminder.
sorry.
We do have our translators on tonight. So that's another step is they've asked us to state our names at the beginning. We'll have to talk to them. They might start to know our voices a little bit better by now.
Right.
Okay. I'm Brittany Meyer, I'm the superintendent, and I will be talking to you about some LCAP updates. So you might be thinking, why are we talking about this again? We already approved the LCAP at the June meeting, and that is true. When I came on in July, I met with Placer County Office of Education. Any LEA, which is the local education agency, which is us, Auburn Union School District, has to have their LCAP approved by their county office. When I got here and went through the LCAP with our 2 people assigned to the programming side and the accounting side at PCOE, there were a number of changes that had to be made for LCAP to be approved. When those changes are significant enough that they make a substantive difference to the document, then we bring it back for approval. So the good news is I'm not unfamiliar with LCAP writing. And now I'm very familiar with Auburn's because I rewrote sections of them in conjunction with Jeremy on the fiscal side in order to make sure that they were compliant with the requirements. So I'm going to go through those changes tonight. And I also have, I know there's been some questions about a couple of things related to distance from standard, for example, and how we use that measurement. So I'll also give you a little background on that so we make sure everyone's on the same page and understanding the metrics that we're using within the LCAP. And I will start us off by talking a little bit about process. So just as a reminder, whenever we write an LCAP, it's a 3-year cycle. This is year one. By this year, I mean 24-25 is year one of a 3-year cycle. You'll see on that bottom arrow there that goals are in bold. The only year you rewrite goals is year one. So this year, Auburn Union School District does have new goals in the LCAP. From there, we draft what the goal is, we draft actions that would help us meet that goal. And then each action has a dollar amount tied to it. That's the budgeting portion. The overarching measurement is what we call the metrics, our outcome data. So there will be metrics associated with each goal, and then we specifically tie them also to each action to say if this is working, we should see metric 1.1 increase. We should see metric 1.3 increase or what have you. Most actions have more than one metric. We'll look within the document and you'll be able to see that as well. Then at the end of the year, you look at what's been done and you assess whether or not it was effective. And that is part of what's called the annual review or the annual update. Usually those pieces are interwoven together, where under each goal, you write about how you did last year, and then you write about any changes you're going to make in the coming year. Because this is year one of the LCAP cycle, and there were some pretty significant changes made to the formatting by the state that we use, the annual update is its own separate document this year, followed by the LCAP. So we'll talk through those parts together. Oh, maybe. There we go. Starting with the first part. So annual update and LCAP are two of the parts, and it starts with part one, which is budget overview for parents. The document that you have in front of you that I emailed you the link to and has the QR code in the back is our LCAP as it's now been rewritten. And the budget overview for parents starts on page 2. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I did want to talk about this diagram that exists on page 2. So the very first page of the budget overview for parents. So a couple of things. In going into this document, there's a couple of ways to write the LCAP and both are compliant. One is, does this have a laser on it? Oh, it does. Okay. So this is our total budget for the district. These yellow, green, and red pie pieces I'm pointing at are other funds that are not incorporated within the LCAP. So those are one-time monies or things that are other state funds or other federal funds. ELOP is an example of this. If, extended learning opportunity program, if you're familiar with that, things of that nature. We got a lot of one-time money during COVID. That's what falls here. This larger part of the pie that's blue is our local control funding formula dollars or LCFF. Now, if you look at this circle to the right, that is a breakdown of this blue portion. Of that blue portion, 15.5-ish million within LCFF is just general fund dollars. But this smaller portion of the pie is what's called our supplemental and concentration dollars within LCFF. In Auburn, that amounts to about $2.5 million. You can write your LCAP to encapsulate all of these funds and explain what you're going to do to spend all of them. Or you can write your LCAP just on this smaller light blue piece of the pie, which is your supplemental and concentration funding. And if that's the case, you have to talk about how each action meets the needs of unduplicated pupils first. There are 3 student groups that count as unduplicated: English learners, foster youth, and low-income students. So this is how Auburn has written their LCAP, just this light blue part of the pie. It's not to say this dark blue part is a secret in any way. It exists in all our budget documents and all of the reports that Jeremy's going to give you over the course of the next year. But in my experience, and I'm going to say this with a caveat, this 126-page document is not necessarily light reading or easy to read, but it does include narrative portions that I think help better explain how we spend our money than a spreadsheet does for most people. So next year, you can expect that when we bring you an LCAP, we're going to be talking about this whole pie But for now, because we've gone through all the vetting process with our educational partners, we're going to keep it within the format it's been in, which is just this light blue part. So that's what I'm walking through now. Any questions so far? Feel free to stop me. Okay. Oh, sorry, that was a circle. I meant to put it up earlier, but I used my laser pointer instead, so you got it. Okay, so let's talk about annual update. This is on page 5. Again, I'm not going to go through the whole document, but I am just going to talk to you about any changes I made. As a reminder, Auburn Union School District had 5 goals in the last LCAP cycle. That has been condensed, so we will no longer have 5, but these were the 5 that the annual update was written on. The first one being around academics, the second being around social, emotional, and physical safety, the third being around parent engagement and educational partner engagement, the fourth being around hiring practices specifically, and then the fifth being targeted for students with disabilities. That was most likely because of numbers for the students with disabilities requiring a focused goal. We no longer have numbers that would warrant something like that. So that fifth goal, students with disabilities, are now incorporated within our subgroups for goal 1, which you'll see in the LCAP. And then that hiring piece is incorporated within high quality instruction in the academics as well. So we do have 3 goals moving forward, but these are the goals the annual update will cover, which is the last 3-year cycle. In each goal area, so again, there's 5 goals. Each goal asks these same 2 questions. The first question is an explanation of how effective or ineffective the specific actions were in making progress towards the goal of the 3-year LCAP. In the version that was approved in June, there was language about what was done within each goal, but it wasn't tied back to a metric so that we could determine whether or not it was effective or ineffective. So what I did is I rewrote that prompt answer within all 5 goals. I won't go through each one, but because that's all going to be covered in the LCAP that I'll go through in a minute, because we made changes to the new LCAP based on whether or not those strategies from last time were effective or ineffective. And then the other piece is directly following that. It says, describe the changes you made to a planned goal, metric, or desired outcome or actions for the coming year, meaning the forward-looking LCAP, based on your reflection that you just did on your prior practice. So adjustments were made there to align with data from the section above and to align with language that was made in the outgoing LCAP. Okay, so now we move on to the actual LCAP, the meat and potatoes of the current school year coming up and the 2 years following. This starts on page 37. I will go through this a little bit more in depth because this is what we're doing, and I think that's probably what people care most about. So as I mentioned, these goals were slightly rewritten from where they were in June, but the gist is the same. Goal 1 is an academic goal. It reads, all students will demonstrate growth towards meeting or exceeding standards in math and English language arts while narrowing the performance gap between the all student group and subgroups. What you will notice in goal 1, the metrics is that, and I'll have them on the next page, is that we will call out our all student group data and our subgroup data as different metrics. It was combined previously and it just becomes a lot to read. So for clarity, we split them up. I'll talk about that. And we do have an obligation to report out data on all subgroups. So if we have 20 or more students in a subgroup, they count on the dashboard for us. And so we listed all the data we have for all subgroups within our metrics, and then we made a goal for where we want to be for them the following year. Our second goal is around safety. This includes both social, emotional safety and physical safety. The district will provide a safe, inclusive, and culturally responsive learning environment to promote connectedness, social emotional wellness, and address the physical needs of students, families, and staff. I believe that is largely unchanged from the LCAP presented in June. And number 3, parent and community members will feel welcome at their child's school and will actively engage in the school community as demonstrated through parent perception rates in outreach opportunities and survey feedback. Goal 2 and 3 were combined in June. So the parent feedback and community member feedback was with social emotional safety and physical safety. It's just pulling them apart helps for clarity, but allows them both to still exist as they should within an LCAP. So that's why they're separated. Question.
Trustee Ross, I think I might have misunderstood when you said one of the goals was retaining staff and teachers, but that's not on here, right? Or
So that was last cycle. We had 5 goals, and the
Right.
4th one was around retaining staff. Within this first goal, we have, this is where, okay, so when I remember that whole pie,
Mhm.
if we were writing the LCAP on the whole pie, you would see a large chunk. Usually it's 70 to 80% of a school district budget goes to staffing.
Yes.
And so maintaining high quality teachers is part of that. And so because we're doing only the light blue part of the pie, you won't see that giant amount, but it is a part of this because we can't have students grow without high quality teachers. And so we do have like teacher feedback on professional development. How are we growing you once we're here? And we also have maintaining numbers of high quality staff as part of a metric within goal 1. So it's
Okay.
kind of still incorporated, but we're not pulling it out separately any longer.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the metrics. CASP. So we're going to use CASP to measure our student progress in ELA and math. I will say previously we had local assessment data as a metric. Likely next year, when we talk about the LCAP, we will add that metric back. The reason we couldn't do it at this point is that we don't have baseline data. So when I looked at the annual update, there were changes over time of the local assessment data that was used. So we weren't comparing apples to apples because the assessment source changed. And in the spring, the assessment source that we had listed in LCAP was this is my understanding, it was optional for teachers to give because there were a couple of options and not all teachers chose that one, just fine. That was what was presented to them, except within the LCAP, we were only using that one metric. So then we didn't have all grade levels represented. Therefore, we didn't have any baseline data to use this time around. But we can add a metric next year once we do have baseline data. We're working on that with the assessment calendar. We'll make sure we're all giving the same assessment. So we may add that moving forward. For ELA and math, we call it the all student group numbers and the subgroup numbers. You'll find that within the metrics in the LCAP. We look at our English learner progress indicator. We had very strong growth there, about 20% or so of kids making progress that are identified as English learners. So we want to continue that. We look at appropriately credentialed teachers. When looking back at last year, we had 97%. We were not at 100. Our goal is 100. So that's where we want to be at our 3-year LCAP. AUSD quarterly Williams reporting, meaning do kids have what they need in the classroom in terms of curriculum? And then 1.8, are we providing professional development that's meaningful to staff? We want to know once they're here, not only are you here and highly qualified, but we're helping to grow your capacity as a teacher and an educator within our system. So those are the metrics. They are not changed much from the previous LCAP, except that we're calling out different subgroups and did take local indicators out. Not indicators, sorry, local assessments. All right, so let me do a little bit of a deeper dive here on CASP distance from standard. It's my understanding that this was sometimes a little bit confusing in the LCAP, and I completely understand why. So let's walk through this so we all understand, because the metrics for CASP are all measured in distance from standard. This is just a sample. This is not a real student. This is taken from the CASP website. So don't worry, Sophia Mitchell does not exist out there and her parents are upset her scores are on the screen. This is a fictitious student, but it exemplifies for you that the distance from standard is the distance between a student's score and the minimum threshold for standard met. So what that means is the minimum threshold, if you can see that red circle right here, for a student at this grade level to have met standard is 2,502 points. This particular student scored 2,540 points. So their distance from standard, Sophia's distance from standard, is 38 points. That's the difference between this minimum number and hers. Now, if we look at what it looks like for a district, this is our real data. This is Auburn's data. It's a year in the rear. So this is 2023. 2024 has not come out yet. This is what we write LCAP on. This is our all student group for English language arts. Our students are in the orange. We have an average of 35.3 points below standard. What that means is this is how far on average all of our students who tested are from the standard met achievement level threshold. So we take all our Sophias and we add all those numbers together. And if there's 500 of them, we divide it by 500. And this is our average student count is 35.3 points below standard. There's an algorithm that is run within the dashboard system. Where were your students before? Did they decline or did they increase? Our students unfortunately declined from 22 to 23 by 10.5 points. And that algorithm shoots out that we are in the orange. Obviously, we want to be over here in the blue.
excuse me, this is
Yes.
President Hall, I've got a question.
Mhm.
So, I know we just saw Sophia's points, and I know that's also like a hypothetical 2,500 points. Do we know what the points this is from? So what is 35 points from standard? Is that 1% from standard? 1.5 like it would be if it was out of 2,500, or is it greater or less than?
Oh, well, I don't know the answer to that question, and that's not a metric that we get because it could that scaled score changes by grade level. So a fifth grader won't have the same scale that a sixth grader will have for ELA CASP. So the way that CASP does it is it says, we just want to know how many just flat points a student is. I guess I could answer your question if I knew, is the range of each band the same length? I don't know the answer to that question, but I could look it up.
Yeah, it's certainly
Right,
not-
is
it's not
every band
frustration to
100
you.
points?
It's,
Okay,
I've actually asked, the state education about it, and I've gotten different answers, or they just give me like the hypothetical Sophia slide, and they won't give me the exact
got it.
things are. It's like, well, then this data is kind of not worth a whole lot if we don't know what 35 points is relative to. So, that would be a whole lot if it's out of 100 points. It's not very much, it's out of 3,000 points.
I see what you're saying, because if we go back, oops, nope, and we look here for this particular grade level, which is grade 5, and this is a real example, that band is about 80 points, but this band is about 50. So yeah, they're different.
And 35 points would be about 1.5,
I see what you're saying.
1.3% below grade level, which wouldn't be too bad.
Yes. Okay, so I agree with you that that might be helpful information to have, but I don't know the answer to your question. What I do know is that this is a number that we use, and maybe I can show you. The next slide will be helpful because part of the other problem is the algorithm. I also don't know, right? So it's like, well, how do I know how to set a goal of where we should be? So County Office of Riverside made a very nice tool that we can now all access and use. I'll show that to you on the next slide, that allows us to do a hypothetical and say, we want to be here in 3 years. What do we have to do each year to get there? And that allows us to set a realistic goal that takes the algorithm into account. So in that way, some of that mystique is removed, but the piece you're asking about, I don't know.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
Trustee Ross, number of students, 885. This is accurate for our AUSD.
Correct.
And is that, I'm sorry, is that unduplicated or?
No,
that's
this
total?
is everybody. So this is how many, and remember, this is 2023. So not the year we just completed, because we don't have that data yet, which would be 2024 data. But what's on the dashboard right now is the end of the 22-23 school year. And that's what we use to write the LCAP. It's always a year behind. So it's a little odd. But we had 885 students test 3rd through 8th grade.
Test.
Mhm.
Got you.
And
okay.
of those students, the average was 35.5 points below
Got you.
standard.
So not all our students test. You don't have to test if you're.
Well, 3rd through 8th grade students do all test. Interesting point, though, that you bring up. A parent can opt a child out. That's not common, but some do. If a district tests fewer than 95% of their students, then we do get dinged for that. So even if all of our students were at standard and we only had 90% of them test, we will dip below most likely the blue or green, because it will take into account that you get a penalty for not having enough students test.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And then taking into consideration that this was the year. No, everything's changing. Everything's so
Correct.
dramatically different.
Correct.
So you're taking that into consideration when you're writing that.
Yes. And in
Okay.
fact, I've written some of that language into the actions. I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so that's that. This is what you're talking about. Unduplicated pupils, not all of them, but these are our English learners. These are our homeless students. These are groups that fall in the red. We have 4 in the orange, and then that encapsulates all 6 of our performance groups that we have enough students to qualify for. As you can see, unfortunately, we have declines in our ELA scores across the board, and kids are below standard. There's improvements to be made. And so that's why we have to look at those actions and be strategic about what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it, so that we can address some of these data points. So let's talk a little bit about how we choose the metrics that we're going to look at in outgoing years. So when we do an LCAP, you fill in your baseline data, and then you say, where do I want to be in 3 years? And then each year we'll fill in a column. Here's where we actually were at year 1. Here's where we actually were at year 2. Here's where we actually were at year 3. This is a snapshot of the Riverside tool, which looks like a lot, but it's not too hard to use. It's pretty great. You put your school up here, you search for it. If you exist in the dashboard, you're in there. So Auburn's in there. And then you search what indicator you want to look at. So this is English language arts. And you will see when we filter that data, we have students with disabilities, homeless, and English learners that are in the red. That's what we saw on the previous slide. And then I can say, let me pick a group. And so what I picked are students with disabilities, but I did this for each of them. And I said, okay, I want to move us one color band by the end of 3 years. And that might not seem like a lofty goal, but that is pretty decent. And if we beat it, that's great. But if we can move our students a color band at the end of this, that means we've moved all our students in this group, students with disabilities, forward. And forward momentum is a good thing. So what I did is I plugged that in, and then I can ask, where are we going to be at year 3? And it will tell me, it'll run the algorithm. And if this was live and I went year 2, year 1, you'll see this little dot moving around and telling you where you're going to be each year. But at year 3, I have to move students by 3, that change that says +3 if you can't read it. I have to move that distance from standard by a +3 every year. And I end up at orange at the end of year 3. So what that means is we have to move our students a total of 9 points over the course of 3 years. And we will decrease that distance from standard in a good way, and then move them to orange. So when I did this for each of our groups, and I did it for every subgroup, including our all student group, that's what you will see in the LCAP under the metric. Is that's why their numbers are what they are. Because if you look at it, you said, well, they're still negative. Why, we're negative 100. Why don't we want to be positive? I'll be honest, that's a big hurdle to get over in 3 years, but these steps are the way that we get there. And we should build momentum over time, because if 3rd graders are improving, they only build on that as 4th graders. They only build on that as 5th graders. And as you get going, you kind of think about it like accelerating your car unless you drive an electric car, maybe there's a lot of torque in those. But if you have a gas car, it takes a little time to get going, and then you can really take off. So that's what we're doing here. We're taking it slow, and then hopefully we'll accelerate from there. Questions about any of that? Okay. Come on. Oh, I forgot about my circles again. Okay. So actions. So here's what I've done. I've written the actions with their number, the name of the action, and then I've told you whether or not we made a change to that action. So first one is multi-tiered systems of support. We made no change to this action. Last year, we started to roll this out. My understanding is it was done, but not the same at every school site. So this year, our district office staff, including our program specialists under general education, will be going out and working alongside teams for their MTSS roundtables on different days. We've staggered them. They're already calendared, and we'll be going through the MTSS process. So we've made no change there, including no change to the dollars. We did make a change here to 1.2, which had Summer Academy. It remains with Summer Academy. That will primarily and principally serve our unduplicated students first, and then any remaining spots will be filled with students in need who are not unduplicated. We had previously extended school year in there, and we removed that. Extended school year is for students who qualify for special education. Because remember, we're only talking about that small blue part of the pie. We're only talking about dollars that are contributing, meaning they primarily and principally are directed towards unduplicated pupils first. ESY is not that, because it's principally directed at students with disabilities, and that is not an unduplicated pupil group. So we pulled it out, and that took out $60,000 from this metric.
Just to clarify, this is Sarah Brickler, that you will offer extended school
Absolutely.
year by law. It's just that
Absolutely.
you're recognizing that it's not related to unduplicated students.
Yeah, I'll
Here.
talk about it here too with tech personnel. Dave's not going anywhere. Don't worry, Dave. But the money is then out of general fund because it's not a contributing. Okay, so that's Summer Academy. Language acquisition program, that's not changing. These are things related to our English language development or ELD curriculum, as well as the people that teach that curriculum. So we made no change there. Obviously, that's principally directed at unduplicated pupils because it targets English learners. Technology support. So we had all of our personnel costs within this action item. Because it's a contributing cost only, Dave, Jordan, they do a lot of work to help gain access for students. We purchase Chromebooks. We make sure there's one-to-one for our older students. All of that is principally directed at unduplicated pupils first, but not all of their time is spent doing that work. So Jeremy did the math, and we pulled $100,000 out of this to account for salaries that weren't spent principally directed at unduplicated pupils. We have class size reduction. There was no change. 10 teacher positions are allocated there to keep our class sizes smaller. And sufficient instructional materials used to exist in goal 2, but it's really an academic component because it's academic curriculum. So we just moved it over, but other than that, no changes made there. Any questions on metrics? Sorry, actions? Okay. One of the things that you had talked about previously was everything's changing. When we have actions that contribute to our unduplicated pupils, we have to explain that in our increased and improved services. Actually, I have a slide on this, I think. So I think I'm ahead of myself. So ignore me for a second. I'll talk about it there. Okay, so goal 2, let's go through metrics. These are all the metrics we're using for goal 2. There's a lot of them. This California Healthy Kids survey was a metric before, but it wasn't split up this way. This goal talks about kids feeling safe at school and also actually being physically safe at school. So we wanted to break these down so that we could easily look at our metrics and then link them to our actions to see if our actions were actually effective or not. So suspension rate, we looked at all students in subgroups. That's very similar to what we talked about with academics. It's broken down. And then using that same tool from Riverside, we determined what we had to do in order to meet our goals 3 years out. We looked at our overall attendance rate, meaning how often are kids coming to school. And then we looked at our chronic absenteeism to look at what percentage of students are not coming a large percentage of the year. I will be honest, this number is very high. It's about 29%. So we'll be looking at chronic absenteeism very diligently over the course of the school year. We already have a few things running that we're collecting data sources on to see if there's anything we can do to help address. Well, to figure out, first of all, what the problem is here and why these kids aren't coming to school, but then what we can do to help that. So expect to hear more on that. We looked at chronic absenteeism, then we look at subgroups. When we look at California Healthy Kids Survey, we broke it out into 3 parts. School safety. So do you feel that your child is safe at school? This was for teachers. Do you feel your students are safe at school? Parents, do you feel your child's safe at school? And students, do you feel you're safe at school? These questions exist in California Healthy Kids Survey, so we could pull it right out of that was given last year. And then same for social emotional supports. Do you feel like they're available to you? Whether or not you use them, do you feel like they're available? And then do you feel connected to your school? That one's just for kids. Do you feel connected here? California Healthy Kids Survey is typically given every other year. The county funds that for us. I've talked to them. They will fund it every year if we would like. And we would like that because we need to do this data source annually to be part of the LCAP. So we will be doing California Healthy Kids Survey every year moving forward. Also, all of our schools are positive behavior intervention schools, otherwise known as PBIS. And a requirement of that they do annually is a tiered fidelity inventory. Fidelity meaning, are we doing what we said we're going to do? So we've now put that in. If that's important to us, we need to measure it. It needs to be part of what we do. So that's part of our metric. And then lastly is our facility inspection tool, otherwise known as the FIT. And that is something maintenance and facilities do. They walk around, they look at buildings, they look at HVAC, all of that, and we get a score. So that's more the physical safety component. Changes made to the actions, intervention, enrichment clubs and sports, no change there. Library media center, no change there. We did appropriately allocate staff positions within student support. So for example, we have a general education program specialist this year, and a portion of her job is overseeing assessments and what we do with that data through MTSS with for our unduplicated pupils. So we added her in as well as some of our community liaison positions. So that increased this by 71,000. We did take a position out of that. So we did have a VP, a vice principal position that was temporary for last year and this year. We had a resignation. She moved out of state, moved to Idaho. The commute from Idaho is a little bit rough, so she won't be with Auburn anymore. We talked with principals about what to do about that, whether they felt they needed that support, knowing that it was going to be 1 year with a temporary position. The conversation was that training a person, getting them on board, and then at the end of the year, they're gone is not necessarily helpful. So we're holding on that for now so that those dollars have been taken out of the budget. Transportation stayed the same. Maintaining safe facilities for upkeep stayed the same. Multi-tiered systems of support exists here again because it has a social emotional component, but it has $0 allocated. It's the only action with $0 allocated because we cover all of the dollars in goal 1, even though the action relates to both. So that was the recommendation of PCOE, although there's a slight disagreement between fiscal and programming. So we may make a small change and just take that out and leave it at 1, but for now it exists in there. And then VAPA is in here as well. And VAPA in performing arts, we improperly calculated based on current position. So we've adjusted that and it's taken 115,000 out of there. Questions on that? I know this is exciting stuff. It's important. It's not necessarily the most riveting. Goal 3. So this is educational partner engagement. Remember, this is kind of a brand new goal, but it is goal 2. We just split it off. So there's 3 metrics here that we're using. Again, California Healthy Kids Survey. We have it. Let's use it. It's standardized. These are both parent questions. So we're using only parent data because this is our educational partner section. We ask them about participation and input. Do you feel you can be an active participant, whether or not you choose to? And do you feel like your input is taken seriously or that you're heard? As well as communication. Do you feel like the communication coming from the school or district is appropriate and helpful? So we have that data in there and we'll continue to look at that. And then we also look at attendance rates for our ELACs and DLAC. DLAC is our district-wide, and then any school with enough English learners, I believe it's 21 or more, has to have an ELAC, which is a site English Learner Advisory Committee. And so we look at attendance for these 2 things. Last but not least, we did add an action item here, which is around engagement. This is communication tools, translation services, things like that. And so it adds $16,000 in total. Okay, so here's what I was going to talk about before I got ahead of myself. Increased or improved services for foster youth, English learners, and low-income students. I didn't give you a page number. I'm sorry. I can tell you where that starts. 30. Great. Okay, so, oh, wait. Actually, 68. Starts on 68. So what happens is, okay, yeah, because they cleaned it up for me and made it one big document. So it's 68 on the cleaned up document. That's the same one linked back there. But anyway, the idea here is that whenever we have an action that's related to contributing funds, we have to talk about need, using data. Why are we picking this particular action? Why is there a need? Any data for AUSD and any site data that's applicable. We had some of that filled out, but not completely. So I updated all those sections. So each one of those contributing actions, which are basically all of them, except I believe 2 that are required to be in there and aren't contributing, talked about need. Then we have to talk about scope. So this is the question about what about the fact that all these kids are all different places potentially with the TK through 8 transition. So we have to say, why are we doing this everywhere, LEA wide or school wide? So if one school has data that shows they really have a need, let's do it there. But why are you doing it at the other schools? All of our actions are LEA wide. And the justification for that is that, well, one, we have unduplicated pupils at all sites, but the data that we were previously using for EB Kane, Auburnell, and Skyridge is essentially becoming pooled because of the TK through 8 transition. And so it's very difficult for us to now extrapolate which schools. We'd have to run all kinds of sorts of algorithms to figure out what it really looks like based on last year's data, but where the kids are now. So what we're doing is to make sure we don't miss anyone. We're providing all of these things LEA wide, and then we'll regroup at the end of the year. It may very well stay that same way, especially if we see growth. But if we see a need, we'll make a change. Yep.
Clarifying question, Trustee Ross. Is that the difference between Title I district and a Title I school? Because I know we went from 2 Title I schools to a Title I district.
So Title I funds, tell me if I'm wrong, Title I funds are separate and apart from the
Got
funding
you.
we're talking about now,
Okay,
right?
this is,
See?
okay, okay. Thank you.
So yeah, so these are contributing dollars only.
Okay.
Yeah. And then metrics to monitor effectiveness. What we had in there before was just kind of a list of like parent surveys, da, da, da. Instead, now what you'll see is numbers. So we said this is specifically tied to metric 1.1, 1.2, and that makes it super easy and clear to see where in the document you can look to see if we made it or not. That is a wrap. If there's any comment cards or questions, I'm happy to answer them.
This is Sarah Brickler and Trustee Brickler, and I just want to thank you for, this is your first month on the job and you dove right into this major rewrite along with Jeremy, and just want to express my
Y bueno,
gratitude to
quiero
your
expresar
thoughtfulness
mi
and to your
gratitud
reworking of this so that we can
al
get it
trabajo que
approved by the
ha estado
county and move
desempeñando
forward.
a
And
conseguir que esto lo aprobara el
I
condado
just, I
y
know that there's a lot when you're
sé que
starting a new
hay
job, and then to
mucho
take
al
this on
iniciar
top
un
of that is,
un nuevo puesto y
is
bueno,
significant.
al
So
tomar
thank
esto
you
tan
for your hard
significativo,
work
le
to
quiero
make
agradecer
this an
por
easier
hacer
read and a
eso,
more
hacerlo más
logical
fácil de
flow and
leer
plan.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to do it.
en relación al
It was
plan.
a lot of work, but the
Sí,
good
con
news
mucho
is
gusto
that
lo
when
hago.
you're
Fue
in it
mucho
this
trabajo, pero
much,
lo bueno es que
I have
ya
a
una vez
much
que
deeper
está uno
understanding than I ever
incorporado
would
en
have had
esto,
from reading it.
tengo mucho
And
más
so that
entendimiento.
will
No
better
lo hubiese
prepare
tenido nada
everybody.
más de haberlo leído, pero me
It was
gusta
good
que lo
experience.
puedo
And Trustee
tener
Ross,
preparado
on
para
that
todo.
note, I also
Aquí,
want to
miembro
encourage
Ross,
any
quiero también
parents that are
animar a
online
todos los
to
padres que se
really be
encuentran en
involved with the
línea
next
que realmente
LCAP,
se
knowing that
involucren
you're this in
al
depth with it, you
siguiente
know what's going
LCAP
on.
para que
It's going
estén
to mean a little
informados
bit
de
of
qué es lo que
something
está
different. And I
pasando. Esto va a
really
ser
feel like
algo
the voices
diferente
have
y
been
realmente
valued. And
siento que
I'm
las
just
voces han
calling out
sido
to any parents
bien
here to
valoradas,
make sure that they
recibidas
show up to the
y
next LCAP meeting, just
yo les
knowing how
pido que
beneficial
se
it's been
presenten a
this
la
meeting.
siguiente sesión de
Yeah,
LCAP
and we can
porque
put a
es muy
plug in for anyone
beneficioso.
listening that we have a
Sí,
parent
y
advisory
podemos también
committee
mencionar
that
que
is linked to
tenemos
our
un
LCAP.
comité de
We
asesor
will
para los
be sending
padres
information about that
y
out early in the
vamos
fall, let
a
people
mandar
get settled, but
información
around
a principios del
September-ish, people should
otoño
expect
para
to see
aquellos que
something from
están
us.
incorporándose en
Asking if they're interested in applying. We'll have principals push it out as well. And then if we get a lot of candidates, there's a process. We'll write all that out. And then we'll start holding our PAC meetings probably January, February timeframe to start talking about the LCAP and the changes we're making and the data sources we have. So it would be great if people want to volunteer for that.
And ELAC.
And ELAC, yes, all the things.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
If there's no further questions, then staff recommends that the LCAP is approved as written. And thank you very much.
Mr. President Holt, I move that we approve the LCAP as written.
Trustee Brickler and I second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 And those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Moving to item 10D, the declaration of need.
Okay, Superintendent Meyer, that's me again. So this document is from June. My understanding is what happened with this is that it was on a consent agenda and it has to be an action item. So when the declaration of need was turned into CTC, which is California Commission for Teacher Credentialing, it was sent back and has to be brought forward again for action. So everything here is the same that you saw in June. We didn't make any changes because it was approved at that time as part of consent. But this is the document that we're moving forward for motion.
This is Trustee Brickler. So that was where we were back in June. Has there been any movement in terms of the need to I don't know if I have the right language for it, but this is essentially saying we're having trouble finding
Correct.
these specific credentials. So could you, I think you'll update us later, but part of my question is has there been any positive movement?
Yes, there has been positive movement. I believe we filled or offered at least our last teaching position for classroom teachers yesterday. We have open right now an ELD position that will be 6th through 8th grade at EV Kane and Auburn L. It is an itinerant position, but only between 2 schools, given the numbers. And we do have an open special education position, although we do have interviews scheduled for that. That is not filled yet, and that is for one of our STC programs. And then, oh, sorry. And then we have our elective wheel classes that are open, which is right now a Spanish leadership performing arts wheel. So that's 3 teachers that rotate through the 3 schools by trimester. Anything I'm missing, Jeremy? We just went through. I think that's all the teaching positions we have open.
Clarifying question, is this related to what the AUTA president said the numbers were off? Because I do see like 2, 4, 2, that equals 6, which is definitely far from being right. Is this that, does this need to be correct in order for us to turn it in? Like, do we need to correct anything?
Well, when Sarah said that, I looked at it and thought, I can do the basic math, and it looks right to me too. We can make the adjustments, certainly. It still has to be the motion still has to be made for it to be approved. you can choose to wait until August and we can bring it back with corrections.
I
Uh,
can move I'm sorry to interrupt. I
No,
can
go ahead.
move that we approve it with revision.
With revision, correct. Yes, you can make a motion to approve with revision, and the revision would be under the type of limited assignment permit section for us to check our math.
And I'm sorry, one more clarifying question, trustee Ross. Will those numbers be extremely different now that we've had new hires? I mean, are we going to make it accurate to what it is now or
Correct.
accurate to what it is on here?
Sorry, you mean accurate to where it was in June or accurate to where it
Gotcha.
is now? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Um, well, Michelle Bunt is not here, but I would assume we would make it accurate to what it is now. There's no need to turn something in that isn't current. And the accurate statement of what we still have open were the numbers I gave you. So technically, what was that? 4 or 5? 3 electives, ELD, 5, special ed. So pretty close to 6 or 8, depending on how you add it.
And those, I'm sorry, are not, those are the credentials that we're still working to get those individuals.
We're looking to fill those positions with credentialed teachers, but if we can't, then we may have to look to a long-term sub.
Gotcha.
There is a possibility that long-term sub will be a credentialed teacher. We do have an option like that floating out there right now. But in the case that they are not, then, for example, we had that last year where someone was a credentialed teacher, but not a special education teacher teaching a special ed class, in which case they're not highly qualified for the position in which they were in. That makes sense.
But it was mandatory that we have somebody in that position.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Just to clarify. Thank you.
So that would be, if you're ready for it, that would be appropriate for a motion with revision potentially. Okay.
I was just looking around to see if anyone wanted to do
Oh.
that. All right, this is Sarah Brickler. I move that we approve the 24-25 declaration of need with revisions that would include up-to-date information and accurate math.
I'll second.
Do you need anything different than that? Or does that work?
No, well,
Okay.
I made a note. We'll
Okay.
check that section.
Okay, great.
And all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
And those opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. And on to item 10E, approval of resolution 24-25-101 to update authorized signatories for AUSD accounts.
Okay, you're gonna be sick of hearing from me, but that's me too. So in case you haven't heard, we have a new CBO. And you also have a new superintendent, and we are not currently signatories for any of the accounts on Auburn Union School District. It would be helpful if we were. So the resolution in front of you is to approve both myself and Jeremy McReynolds as signatories for Auburn Union accounts. And then assuming that was approved through roll call, given that it's a resolution, Greg would sign that. And just so you know, typically the secretary of the board would sign the bottom of the resolution. But that is me, and that's a little odd because you're choosing to put me on accounts. So Renee is listed at the bottom. That's why that looks a little bit different for the attestation at the bottom. And staff recommends you move forward with approval of resolution 24-25-101.
And this is President Holt, and I move that we approve resolution 24-25-101.
I'll second.
And will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Let's start with trustee Wedge,
Yes.
trustee Ross,
Aye.
trustee Brickler,
I,
clerk Grigsby, aye, and President Holt.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Have it. And the motion carries. So moving to item 11A, board policy 9270, conflict of interest first read.
Okay, so this is a first read policy, so no action needed. It's informational only. What you will see in the track change version is that there is a paragraph at the bottom. Sorry, I'm trying to find my copy. There's a paragraph at the bottom regarding that there is the weight of law within violation of the conflict of interest policy. So here's the backstory on the conflict of interest policy. We have an audit done, a fiscal audit done every year. Our auditors asked us to have this within this language that you see in front of you within the board policy. It's fairly new. Jeremy reached out to CSBA. They are looking to provide language for districts to add to their policies in January or February, which obviously is a little late for us because our audit has happened and our auditors are asking for it now. If we don't update the language, then that would be a finding within the audit, which obviously would not behoove us. So what I did is I ran the language by our attorney, Kim Bogard, to see if there were any kind of outstanding issues that we should be aware of with the language proposed by our auditors. She had no qualms about the language, felt that it was appropriate. And so because of that, we've put it in exactly as listed that you see there. So what I will do, let me open it here. I'm going to read the language just so that we all hear what it says. And this, just to clarify, is the conflict of interest. So relating to those Form 700s that is done by the board, as well as district office staff, such as myself or our CBO, for example, to talk about any conflicts of interest that we might have. And so this paragraph reads, this code has the force and effect of law. Designated employees violating any provision of this code are subject to the administrative, criminal, and civil sanctions provided by the Political Reform Act, Government Code Sections 81000 to 91014. In addition, a decision in relation to which a violation of the disqualification provisions of this code or of Government Code Sections 87100 or 87450 has occurred may be set aside as void pursuant to Government Code Section 91003. So essentially, you're asked to follow the law, and if you don't follow the law, there are legal ramifications that come with that, is the gist of the language. But this is first read. If you have any direction or directions you'd like to give to staff, or questions that you have that you'd like us to bring back next time, please let us know. And then we will bring this back for a vote as an action item in August. Oh, I'm sorry, not auditors. Through the audit by CDE. Correct. I'm sorry. So CDE, thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for leaning into this, getting us out of it. Are there any questions or discussion points on this before we move forward? Okay, moving on then to.
Actually, I'm sorry. I do have one question, only because I've done that 700 form wrong and I've had to redo it. Sorry, this is Trustee Ross. Can we go to CSBA, or is there somewhere we can go as board members to make sure that we're filling this form out right?
Yes, you can. So there's actually a great podcast done by Lozano Smith. I can send it to all of you. And it walks you through Form 700. And then it also lists for you in the podcast notes, and within the podcast, they talk about resources that are available to you. I can't remember if it's the tax board or what have you, but they give you a list of resources, and there's actually live people you can call and say, hey, do I list this? Do I not list this? And they can be very helpful. So I'll send that out.
Thank you so much.
Moving forward then to 12A, board election and requests. Do we have any new requests this evening?
I heard the AUTA president say that on the first day of school, they're just really hoping that staff can be there to account for parents and things and help alleviate that situation. So I'm just wondering, is that a possibility to make sure that we're staffed at each school in that capacity?
I don't know that I heard her necessarily say staff. I don't know.
I'm
if
sorry,
She was,
yeah.
just, it could be I'm not sure if it was trustees, that there would be someone accountable to field questions, is what I thought I heard.
Yeah, I have that in my superintendent update, but I'll throw it in now. So I've been talking to district office staff about exactly that. We have 3 staff assigned to each school site for the first day of school. I'm going to take a guess that there are quite a few people that have questions at EB Kane. I'll be at EB Kane. Jeremy and Kelly will be between the other 2 school sites, and then our program specialist, EL Tosa, and who am I missing? Oh, instructional coach. Thank you, Emily. We'll split up between the three school sites as well. And then we have additional office staff to account for 3 people. And we'll be doing a few things. We'll be splitting up, divide and conquer, answering questions, just even helping direct parents. Hey, I'm new here. If my kid's in TK, where do I go? That kind of thing. And then the other thing we'll be doing is helping our health clerks with any students who don't have immunizations so that we can make sure that we call parents, we get them resources and all of that. So all the stuff that has to happen on the first day, there's a lot. And this year there will be even more given the TK through 8 transition and people just kind of figuring out which end is up as they navigate a new school site. So yep, we have a plan for that.
And then I'm just wondering, again, sorry, trustee Ross, after you give your comments, your superintendent comments, if we'll have an opportunity, if we have further requests, can we add them in after that? Because I have requests, but I'm guaranteeing that you're going to answer them in your superintendent.
Do you want to ask them now? We could just do it now. Then I'll just be quiet from the superintendent.
I'd rather wait to see what you give us first.
Okay.
Save us all time.
Okay, so let's move forward then to comments from the superintendent.
Okay. So a couple of things that we have upcoming. We have tomorrow, SOAs, SAWs, and principals will be here for all day training where we'll cover things like what the first day of school looks like. We're talking about what we're going to do for parent orientation for TK Kinder. There's a number of things on there, including really fun stuff like uploads of data confirmation and all of those nuts and bolts. So that'll be exciting. Everyone will finally be kind of back and in the swing of it in the same room. We also have new employee orientation happening on Friday. So if anyone is interested in joining us, I believe it's an 8 a.m. start and we will be in the large gym at E.B. Kane. So please feel free to come. It would be great to have board members there, say hi to our new staff. I will be there doing a little bit of a welcome. We may be playing a 4 corners game, so you'll get to enjoy that as well. So that's on Friday. Then of course, all staff start to come back the week of the 12th. We have a welcome back day scheduled for the 12th. That is primarily going to take place at school campuses because it's such a new year and people have to figure things out. A lot of talk about safety and things related to the new school campus, so everyone's aware of that. But we will start all together in the morning at E.B. Kane. We're going to serve breakfast starting around 7:30. And then I will start talking around 8. I promise I will be done by 9, probably before that. No one needs to hear me for that long, but we'll cover some things that have come up as kind of common concerns, just so that we're all kind of in the same room. And then just a general welcome message. Here we are, where are we headed? What are our goals for the year? So would love if anyone wants to come from the board, please let me know. We'd love to have you. We'll have that at E.B. Kane if I didn't say that, starting at 8 a.m. on the 12th.
How much does that go till?
For that all together portion, just till 9.
Okay.
And then staff will leave. They'll have time to get over to their school sites, kind of get themselves situated. And then maybe 9:30ish or so, the principals will start their agenda. And that kind of is dependent on what it looks like for them. You're going to see probably a lot of culture and community building, things on school safety and all kinds of related things for start of the school year. But you're of course welcome at that as well, but people will split off starting at 9. So those are some upcoming things we have, things we've already done. So yesterday, Sarah was here for a root cause analysis. Root cause analysis is digging deep on a problem and looking at what are the roots and the causes that are leading to that problem. The problem statement we all looked at is that AUSD has historically high rates of turnover. Looking at the fact that that makes it hard for us to have fidelity of program implementation. Some of the things we talked about with LCAP and the moves we have to make are really dependent on having people who are in the system and continuing to be in the system. But even perhaps more important than that is the relationships that people form with each other as adults and colleagues so that they can learn from one another. And also that obviously we form with our students. So looking at that problem statement, we drilled down into root cause. We came up with 4. But the 2 driving root causes that we're addressing first are around consistent policies and procedures. And so those are a lot of the things that we're already looking at and will continue to look at into the coming year. And the other one has to do with I'm going to say what we are going to do, which is improving our communication across the district. And so that looks like, common policies and procedures that the district is drafting in consort with all the players of those things those people that relate to the policy, and then clearly communicating that implementing and providing support. That was also part of it, to say our principals or whoever the practitioners are of that particular thing. So we had a great conversation. It's a long process. We were here for 4 hours together. And at the end, we kind of went through the bullet points of each particular root cause and talked about some action items we can start right away. And so there was great feedback given there. So looking forward to starting on some of those things, and some of the things that people were asking for we're already doing. So it's kind of nice to know at least we were in the ballpark and of where everyone's hoping we go. So hopefully Sarah agrees that I thought it was a good day. Yeah. It was a long day. It's pretty tough, but your brain's pretty tired at the end, especially when you're on summer break and kind of get pulled out in the middle of it. But it was great. So we did that. Had a great time. Other than that, it's been a fantastic transition into Auburn. I've been here since July 1, but it feels like I've been here longer. I have met so many people. I know I'm going to meet more. I really look forward to meeting kids and families once everyone's back on the 14th. But I've been very, very impressed that the level of care that people have for kids and the district, and helping us all kind of, as I describe it, pull from the same oar and move in a common direction is palpable. So it's been lovely. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I'll continue to enjoy it for hopefully quite a while longer. So how'd I do? What else do you have?
Well, I got a couple questions.
Okay. Yeah.
But if anybody else, I also want to be considerate that I've asked a lot of questions. So if anybody else has questions.
If you have questions for the superintendent, go ahead.
Okay. My first question is on, I'm going to get this right. Intra-district transfers?
With people who live in Auburn but want to go to school that's not their home school.
Yes.
Intra. Yep.
So has that been sorted out, and does everybody know what school they're going to now? Do you feel confident in that?
So we did have spreadsheets of intra-district transfers, and I believe if we are not all the way there, we're close, but that is a topic of conversation for tomorrow, because SOAs and SAWs are not back yet. Those ARIES, new enrollees, and all kinds of things that have come in over the summer, they're working through those now. So we need to look at that. And it was something the principals asked to be on the list, in just to make sure, are we all tight with our numbers and who's going where and what's been approved and has that been communicated? So it's definitely something we're going to look at tomorrow. And if it isn't sorted out, there will be a plan and a way to figure it out from there.
And then my same question, but for inter
Mhm.
transfer students, are they also acknowledged, and have we been able to place them in our school sites, or we'll figure that out tomorrow?
Inter districts come through this district office, and they would all go across my desk in terms of the superintendent's office. I haven't had inter districts come in since July 1st. So to my knowledge, that has been handled prior to June 30th. We haven't had any July inter districts. Intra districts, I believe people have submitted. So, and the deadline has come and gone for those. So that's part of the conversation for tomorrow.
Okay. And then do we have like an approximation of how the students are, how many students, how many 6th, 7th, and 8th graders do we have at Auburn Elementary as compared to EBK and Sky Ridge? Has that kind of been sorted out as well? What does that
Yes.
look like?
Yes, we have numbers. EB Kane, I'm going to give you rough numbers here, but EB Kane does have the largest population of 6th through 8th grade students, largely based on intra-district requests. So we're around 250 to 275, somewhere in that range. 275, I think, is more accurate. And then we have smaller numbers of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at Auburnell and Sky Ridge, around something just shy of 100 typically. So we have about 2.5 times at EB Kane what we have at the other two sites.
And how does it look for elementary at EB Kane? Our students?
That I don't know off the top of my head, because the 6th through 8th grade numbers are the ones we were looking at closely to figure out actually Chromebook distribution and what have you for technology. But our schools are fairly similar in size. So that's accurate, right? They were all fairly similar in size.
The 1st through 5th is similar in size.
The schools themselves are similar in size. So then proportionally, EV Kane will have slightly more middle schoolers and slightly fewer elementary students. But overall, the population of the school sizes are the same. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yes. I just want to make sure that we're not over extinguishing in 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then we have like 15 first graders and the parents are concerned because there's so many students than little students.
Yeah, well, I can certainly get those numbers and send them out if you would like them. That's another thing we're talking about tomorrow, along with the inter and intras, is just to make sure everyone's properly populated into Aries by school. And so probably by what's tomorrow, Thursday. So like by Monday or Tuesday, giving SOAs and SAWs the chance to put all that in, we should have more accurate numbers. But based on what we have now, I mean, we have a TK class and 2 kinder classes at EB Kane. So, and they're not 8 kids each class kind of thing. So they're decently enrolled classes. So we do have the younger students enrolled there as well.
And my last question.
Yeah.
I know parents, I know you're doing the best you can, and this whole playground and everything that's going on, it has been a little bit of a hassle. And I know parents are feeling a little concerned about not having that structure there and having recess indoors
Yeah.
and things of that sort. And we found the positive sides. You've done amazing at finding the positive sides. How has that response been? And it's just kind of, it is what it is, or how are students going to be able to engage in during recess?
I had through me, I had two, although I don't think one was even about TK K playground, but I had 2 parents reach out after the TK through 8 update. And so we're addressing those concerns for them individually, but not bad overall. I would say that no one is pleased with it, including myself, that we're here. But what I will say is that, and this was a conversation we had yesterday, actually, the question was, okay, well, and this was part of the TK3 update FAQ portion. At what point did Auburn start doing the things that would move us forward? And was that part of the delay? And the answer there is, to the best of my knowledge, no, we didn't. On our side, there wasn't a delay. Things were approved as they should be. And then we took the next steps in terms of engaging an architect, coming up with a plan, submitting to DSA, Division of State Architecture. The best way I can describe it to people is that DSA is very much like if you're getting a building permit for your house, and that process is hard to navigate and takes time. And in the FAQ, we talked about Auburnell and Skyridge were also submitted and they were approved, but EB Kane was not. And well, it has not yet been. It continues in the process. And why did that take longer? And what we have now learned, Jeremy and I both, is that there's a process called over the counter that Skyridge and Auburnell qualified for because of the nature of the projects. Because EB Kane had interior work, including that restroom work, it had to go through a full review. And that's required extra layers with DSA, including required in-person meetings and things of that nature. And then we've just run into regular life stuff, right? It's July, people are on vacation. Jeremy found out this Tuesday that the next person we're waiting on for approval at DSA is on leave until next week. So then that gets delayed until next week for a response. But given that the timelines we've projected in terms of sometime in that early fall timeframe will get install done still seems to hold true. But we are running into little bumps along the road as we go. But the bathrooms are working, as I said. The kids can use the bathrooms as they are, but we'll just make sure that they have, a step stool or what have you, especially to wash their hands for those little guys. But the bathrooms are in order. Once that construction starts, it's a fairly quick turnaround process on that. We'll have an alternate bathroom for them to use. And then we're just dealing with the playground. There's 2 playground structures at EB Kane. So those 2 obviously are linked together. There's a TKK and then the outside improvements with the existing one. It has like a triangular shaped climbing area. So both of those are slated for that early fall timeframe at present. But yeah, we'll get there as soon as we can, but
Get
there
there.
is a plan.
By the time it starts raining, and then we're stuck indoor anyways, and
Well, I don't know. Sometimes it's I mean, I'm not saying Halloween is the time frame, but I've worn a tank top at Halloween, so maybe it's gonna be fine,
welcome
right?
to Auburn.
So yeah. But no, it'll be great when it's done. But I've learned a tremendous amount through this process. And so not that we're installing playgrounds of this nature next year or anything like that, but next time there's a big project, I think we've learned a lot about how we kind of step our way through it a little bit better.
That's not true. Questions, thank you.
Absolutely. And so this is President Holt. I really just want to welcome Dr. Meyer. This is your first regular board meeting with us. So thank you for being here with us. Welcome Jeremy as the CBO, and also welcome Jenny Patrick as the assistant for us this evening. So welcome to the team, everybody. Thank you for just going in detail there on the Kane playground work. That's the superintendent's been keeping me posted too. We've talked to Assemblyman Patterson's office. They've been pinging the Division of State Architect. And it's been turnaround on responses. Looks like it's been like over a week generally every time. So it's just been dragging things out. I guess this is more of a question too. I should have probably asked this question a moment ago. Just want to know what we're expecting, what day we expect teacher assignments going out. If we have that.
For parents. Yeah, that's actually on the agenda for tomorrow. So what we're hoping to do is to get the data confirmation process going for families by Wednesday of next week. And then families will have to submit their data confirmation in order to have their teacher release. Obviously on the first day of school, we're going to tell you where your kid goes, but if you want it early, you got to do your data confirmation first. And so our hope, I believe the mention was typically it's at least the Friday before school starts. So that would be 9th, Friday the 9th. Is that right? Maybe the 10th. But that's the date I think that SOAs and SAWs were talking about being able to get that out. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, turn on it. Else on the board.
This is Clerk Grigsby. Absolutely welcome, Dr. Meyer. So happy that you're on this side of the table with us this time. And absolutely, it's great to have a second table over there with more additions to the team. Can't wait to see what we all can do together and what this year will look like. It's really exciting. Thank you.
Brickler, welcome to our new team. We're very grateful for you. And I just wanted to say, kind of give a quick acknowledgement for all those who are moving classrooms, moving schools. Like there's a lot of transition that's happening and it's a lot of work. And I appreciate, I think there's always a lot of work leading in preparation to a new school year, and there's an additional layer this year. So I just wanted to thank all the team members that are working to make this happen. Like, for example, I remember hearing that Dr. Meyer and Jeremy and others were like strategizing about how to make the moves as seamless for our staff as they could. And just that it's a heavy lift. And I guess one question, you've given us some opportunities for upcoming meetings, but how do you want the board to show up for things? Do you want us to try to go to, like welcome back events? Should we focus on staff welcome back events? Should we try to have a presence welcoming students on the first day? What would be helpful from us?
Well, I think certainly you're always welcome at any of those things. If you communicate with us which ones you plan to come to, that's always very helpful so that we know who to expect and that, we can kind of navigate through that process if it's happening in different parts of the campus or whatever, if it might be back to school night or what have you. What I would think would be helpful is we'll have a calendar of events by site. I would assume they're going to have those coming out pretty soon because there's going to be back to school and all of that. We'll make sure that those get shared with you. And then you can let us know which ones you plan to attend and CC principals on that, and then they'll know to expect you. I also think it would be fantastic once we give teachers a little bit of time to get settled because it does take time. But after school's kind of been running for a couple of weeks, looking at that end of August, beginning of September timeframe, I would really appreciate the opportunity to walk classrooms with you, either as one or two of you at a time and myself. I think it would help all of us to just see what's happening in classrooms and what great things are going on. Plus the kids are pretty cute. Even the middle schoolers, but if you have a bad day, you can go build Legos with kindergartners and it solves all your problems. But I think that it behooves us to kind of do that and kind of see what's out there. There's good stuff going on, and sometimes even when you think you know it, you're like, oh, but this great thing in third grade. And it's also really powerful to go watch teachers do a great thing and then go to another school site and have a teacher say, oh, I wish I could try something like this, and say, I just saw that happen. I know who you can connect with. And teachers build partnerships and everyone benefits that way. So there's just so many layers that are beneficial to being on campuses and watching what's going on. So I would love to set that up with you. And I was very rude and I apologize and did not introduce Jenny Patrick, but she joined us on Monday. So she's well-versed in all the things, obviously, because it's already Wednesday. But Jenny is the administrative assistant for my office. She's been learning all the things and doing fabulous work. And so she's a great person you can email with dates you're available if there's anything that works anytime throughout the day, Monday through Friday, and we'll get it scheduled to go walk sites together.
Trustee Ross, on that note, I'm definitely excited for all of us to show up and see the implications of the choices we've made for our students and how that relates. So thank you for that opportunity. And I also, you know me, I love my teachers and my educators and my staff and not even ours, our communities, educators. So I do want to just really thank you so much to our educators and our teachers and our staff and our para-educators and our counselors and our nutritionalists and our faculty and maintenance. And I mean, the list goes on because this has been watching this, you know, showing up and trying to see who needs help. And there is still a grieving process that people are going through. So it's nice for us to show up and just show that we care. And so this is my reach out to any teachers that need help setting up their classroom, or if there's anything we can do to help, please, please, please reach out to us. At least reach out to myself. I don't want to speak for the entirety of the board in this degree, but reach out so that we can help because I am totally available in here for whatever needs to happen.
All right, I guess I'm last over here. Few things, just want to the same comments that the board made, definitely, appreciate, you and, just all the new faces. It's been a wild summer of, many cabinet members resigning and the new cabinet members coming in, and then also the transition we're going in. And, from what I'm seeing, it's been a fairly smooth transition, all around. And I'm excited to see the fruit that's going to come from this. And it's looking, as of now, it's looking really, really good. And also just want to ditto also what, help with the teachers, I could speak for myself. I mean, if you need help, reach out to me as well. And so I'm available, evenings are best for me. And I know setting up the classrooms, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably working well into the evenings. So, and that's usually when I can come in and help out when you guys are running out of gas. I can come in and provide a little extra support. So with that, so thank you.
It is 8:31 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.